There was a time when I wasn't sure whether this day will come, but I'm very glad that it has come. It's a day when I have the honor and privilege to hand over to the President the final parts of the Commission's report.
Within 4 months from this date, I will formally present to Parliament the full report of the Commission together with an indication of my intentions on the implementation of the Commission's recommendations.
The much-awaited final volume of the State Capture Report finally out. We try to dig in. My panelists for this evening are governance specialists, Professor Gwandiwe Kondlo and Mr. Sandile Swana. And from one of the entities the fifth and final report deals with, we'll be talking to former PRASA chairperson Khanyisile Kweyama. Today's nice episode of the Watchdog starts right now. To get us going, here's what this particular volume is about.
They deal with a number of topics. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I just mention, for example, some of the SOEs involved. It's SABC, and we, apart from SABC, state security is also covered. Friede Dairy project is covered. Parliamentary oversight is covered. We also have chapters that deal with money flows and how money that was obtained through state capture was moved out of the country. We've got a chapter that deals with that. We've got, we deal also with the evidence of the president as president of the country and president of the ANC. We deal with the evidence relating to the ANC. And then we have a lot of evidence relating to some individuals. We deal with waterkloof lending as well. So all of those topics are covered.
The handing over of the report, of course, is supposed to have happened on Monday, even there after lots of delays. But it was delayed again on Monday. It was delayed again this afternoon for about 2.5 hours. The report itself actually landed about 12 minutes ago or so. So journalists had some questions for both the President and the Chief Justice on the delays.
I cannot accept the innuendos and the suppositions that are being made that there was any way in which the Chief Justice and I could have discussed the substance of the work. It is quite demeaning, actually, because it is way, way, way below what the Chief Justice would do. I would not even know how to even ask the Chief Justice to comment on the substance of his work. It is completely out of nature.
Well, here's what the Chief Justice himself had to say for his part.
Let me start where I should start. And where I should start is to apologize. I apologize to you, Mr. President, for keeping you waiting. I apologize to all of you for keeping you waiting. There were certain challenges, but we were determined that the handover should happen today. I really appreciate your patience and your understanding.
Chief Justice there apologizing, also saying he could not have done it any other way. Well, let me welcome my guests, Professor Kondlo and Mr. Swana. Good evening to both of you, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Good evening.
We're at a huge disadvantage here. We're expecting, the report to have landed at least, 2.5, 3 hours ago, in fact. Yeah. None of that actually happened. In fact, it only started coming through. It's a very thick report, more than 1,000 pages, about 12 minutes. Well, now it would be about half an hour ago, but 12 minutes before we came on air. So we had a huge disadvantage there. But just from what the Chief Justice said, this particular part of the report deals with. It's your state security agency. It's your Friede Dairy project. It's the SABC. It's Parliament's oversight role, money flows, what happened to some of the money that was obtained via the state capture project, and how some of that was moved out of the country, the evidence of the president of the ANC and the president of the country. Now, a lot was ventilated, during the time the commission sat on these matters. Perhaps first I should ask you, Prof, what for you, of all these entities and issues, that the Chief Justice said this report touches on, what for you, which one interests you the most?
I think it's fairly obvious now that the issue of security, state security, is a very interesting one. Yes, given the level of intrigue within the ruling party itself, that one is very, very important. So one would be interested actually to see the level of detail, the fact compared to interpretation, which one finds, especially on the section which deals with state security. Remember, intelligence, many scholars would tell you, that is actually the underworld of democracy, you see. So it's always a very sensitive spot, also a very interesting spot.
For you, Mr. Swana?
Parliamentary oversight. I think that the democracy that we have, where the executive has to account to the representatives of the people, and those representatives must, to a large degree, put brakes on wrong decisions and call for corrective actions at the earliest time. I think it was just astounding that a lot of the parliamentarians of the majority party knowingly allowed state capture to continue for so many years without stopping it. So the parliamentary oversight, I think, is the centerpiece of the state capture.
Well, of course, one of the, to start with the state security one, Prof, that for you is the one that appeals the most. We know that the Chief Justice actually dismissed Arthur Fraser, who was at some point, the head of the State Security Agency. He dismissed his application to cross-examine witnesses, which in the end meant that, of course, of his own accord, Fraser that is, decided that, did not appear before the commission. Now, the Chief Justice gave his reasons at some point about why he dismissed Arthur Fraser's request or application to cross-examine witnesses at the commission. Take a listen to what Raymond Zondo gave as reasons for that decision.
I
applicant has not complied with the rule in relation to identifying in the affidavits of the witnesses exactly the paragraphs and parts of paragraphs that he disputes and which implicate him and what his version is in regard to that. But two, he has, on his own admission, said that his version is incomplete without the documents that he sought to obtain from the State Security Agency. The Commission adjourned his application on the 14th of April in order to give him and the State Security Agency an opportunity to discuss and reach agreement on the documents that could be made available to him, because quite clearly the State Security Agency was prepared to give him documents if they are relevant to the scope of the commission or relevant to the allegations that had been made against him in the commission, and if it could do so without being in breach of the law. It is quite clear that they agreed as to what should happen, and that included compliance with Chapter 24 of the regulations promulgated under the Intelligence Services Act of 2002. The State Security Agency says he has not complied with that in order to get the documents that he contends he is entitled to get. He has not explained why he has not done so in circumstances where he told this commission on affidavit that those documents that he sought were very important in order for him to complete his statement and to give this commission a complete picture. In those circumstances, I can see no reason why it can be said that it is in the interest of the work of the commission to grant the applicant leave to cross-examine any of these witnesses in the circumstances that I have set out in relation to non-compliance with the rules of the commission, and in relation to there being no explanation as to why, having said that his statement would not be complete without the documents that he asked for from the State Security Agency, and the commission having given him time to ensure that he secured such documents, and the State Security Agency having undertaken to give him such documents, why he has not pursued that and why he is no longer seeking to place those before the commission so that his statement before the commission is complete. In all of these circumstances, I've concluded that the applicant's application stands to be dismissed, and it is so dismissed.
So the Chief Justice basically saying the ball was in his court. He promised to do certain things, seek information from the state security agencies, which he needed to use, but he didn't do that. So the bottom line is he did not comply. What do you make of that?
I'm sure probably on this particular one would need a legal analyst. I tried to listen to the points made by the Chief Justice, the head of the commission, several times actually, and I actually found it so technical and sometimes a bit slippery. I mean, as an ordinary South African person, I actually think maybe they should have taken the risk on this one to give Mr. Arthur Fraser chance to appear before the commission and make his point, debate it there, you see, and actually prove it to him right there, you see, that it is empty on this point, it is weak on this point, and so forth.
And there can be no doubt, Mr. Swana, that, I mean, this report is going to be poorer without the evidence of Mr. Arthur Fraser, given the position he occupied, number one, but two, the allegations that were leveled against him?
Well, we may put that in that manner, but you must remember that this is not the only report that touches on the state security that is out there. So it depends who's going to follow this up. Cyril Ramaphosa himself and Sidney Mafamadi have already prepared their own report and acted on it. And if Arthur Fraser was very serious about presenting himself and presenting hard evidence to the commission, he would have complied fully. But I think he's keeping something back, perhaps for his day in court and so on and so forth.
Okay. Take a listen to what he had to say the day we got a chance to speak to him last year.
Reflect on 2009. It is when, soon after, President Zuma was appointed. There were 3 officials appointed to lead intelligence in South Africa: Jeff Matkutuka, Mo Sheikh, and Gibson Njenje. They formed State Security Agency. But as soon as they came in, I was perceived or projected to be an Mbeki-ite.
Is this when you were suspended?
Before my suspension in 2009. In actual fact, on the second week of their tenure, my powers were withdrawn as a DDG operations. And staff were told that I'm Mbeki-ite and we're going to be dealt with. In actual fact, it would have been nice to cross-examine some of them.
Making a point there about why he wanted to or insisted on cross-examining those witnesses who had leveled allegations against him. But here's something that was interesting for me, because when then we started talking about the SSA itself and its work and whether it actually, did as an agency with the mandate it has, it actually did perform the tasks that it was supposed to perform. He made some interesting admissions. I hope we're going to be able to play that before I ask you.
We can say that there may have been a lapse in intelligence. But I think the challenge that we have, especially in intelligence, but I think it's something that happens in government at large, is the fluidity of the leadership in those services. If you just think in those 9 years, we've had, 3, maybe 5 DGs appointed, and a number of senior managers appointed. So there's no continuity. And the reality is that you need continuity in leadership to ensure that you're able to disrupt projects that may be underway.
Do you think that was the problem? The fact that we've had, something like 7 ministers since 1994?
Correct.
And about 10 or so, or no less than 10?
No less than 10.
DGs. Do you think that was the problem?
I think,
or that is the problem with our intelligence?
Not just intelligence, it's throughout government, is the fact that there's no continuity. And I think also when we have a change in administration, we act as if it is different parties that are actually governing the institution.
I want to end this part of our conversation with a quote from the president on the day he was concluding his testimony at the state capture inquiry. He said, and I quote, "The establishment of a commission was a crossroads for us. I hold the belief that if we did not establish a commission, we would have continued to waddle in a situation where corruption continued unabated in the dark." Do you agree with him on that?
That's the
Notwithstanding the revelations you have, for the fact that you still haven't had an opportunity to, cross-examine people who leveled allegations against you or say your side of the story, but just watching, or from what you've watched, would you agree with that sentiment?
I can agree with it in part for you. I think if we get our intelligence agency to perform the function that they should perform, and that is to be the risk management agency of the state, then we will get closer to getting rid of corruption within government and even society. And that's why I'd want to agree with you, this fluidity of heads of intelligence is a problem. We need to allow people to serve their tenure and to be held accountable for lapses that occur.
Of course, I think he would have, answered those questions more directly at the commission than in front of a journalist. But the fact that what he calls the risk management agency of the state, what you call the underground of democracy, the fact that things were bad at that level, and from what he said, look, we're no different from other departments with high turnover of DGs and senior managers, high turnover of ministers. So why are you going for us? We're no exception to the rule.
Yeah, he's absolutely quite evasive if you listen to the interview quite clearly. But at the same time, look, I hear the issue of failing to comply. You see. But I think if but I still think if the commission really wanted to create, to leave no space, you see, space to challenge its credibility, they should have found a way to actually get this chap to testify before the commission.
I'll agree with you more. Mr. Swana, to your point about the role of the legislature, and I'm tempted to draw parallels between what actually happened, in the case of the State Security Agency, and the view that Prof holds, and what has just happened, or is happening, in fact, in Parliament right now as we speak. The opposition MPs hold a view that Parliament is within its rights and should be asking the president to appear before it and ask him some basic questions about this whole farm saga. The response, after a while, from the Speaker of the National Assembly has been that the requests from UDM leader Bantu Olomisa and the ATM President Vuyelwethu Zungula did not meet the requirements of the kind of motion that they want to table. And I've heard a lot of people saying, are we going back now to the Nkandla and Zuma years and so on? And I'm asking this on the back of what you said, that for you, you're keen on what this report says about the legislature, the role that Parliament has played in allowing state capture to continue. Your thoughts?
Yeah, you must remember that the biggest difficulty that Cyril Ramaphosa has created for all of us is that as time has progressed, he has every vacancy that becomes available in more than one way, fill it up with loyalists to himself, to protect himself, even put people who are compromised, because I think Nosiviwe Mapisa Ngula is in a very difficult position relative to the media insurrection, July insurrection 2021. And then he puts her there. So the ANC is in a quagmire, and part of the job now is to protect the. I regard Cyril Ramaphosa as the sheepskin on the wolf that the ANC has. If the ANC is the wolf, Cyril Ramaphosa is the sheepskin on that wolf. And that is their sheepskin, and they've got to protect him. And we're back where we were with Jacob Zuma.
We don't know, obviously, what
Yes.
the report actually says about the role of Parliament. But we know, for a fact, from what has been said so far, in other words, we don't know what this last part of the report actually says and the recommendations that it makes. But Parliament came in for quite a beating about how they handled, all those Ngandla situations and everything that flowed from there. Now, but from what you've observed since the beginning of this term, does it look like Parliament has actually changed its ways?
Vuyo, it's not easy to say at the moment, because really, throughout, I would say from the time the new Parliament was inaugurated, Parliament has been battling and failing, actually, especially in the areas of oversight. And secondly, Parliament has also been weak in making public participation real, get it to work for the poor. You see, the failure of oversight by Parliament actually created a lot of gaps, you see, for state capture and for corruption. Yes. So it's interesting that this report is going to be focusing on Parliament, because there's a lot really we need to talk about the role of Parliament, the National Assembly, provincial legislatures in strengthening our democracy. These guys are not playing the role they're supposed to be playing. These guys are not up to the task. I'm saying all of them, from the ruling party to opposition parties. We need a Parliament which really matters. And it's going to be interesting to see what this particular report is saying about Parliament. What can we take home from this report on that particular section dealing with Parliament?
Mr. Rana, I mean, just from seeing, we saw those scenes over a week ago when it was the president's budget vote. You saw what the EFF tried to do to stop him from talking. This, of course, on the back of all manner of allegations brought about by the whole presidential farm saga. Did it tell you anything about whether or not this Parliament is beginning, at the very least, to correct the wrongs of the past, the wrongs which end them, the rebuke, and the criticism we saw coming through from the Chief Justice in previous reports?
Yeah, I think that there are difficult parts to that. For instance, not long ago, the Democratic Alliance was favoring Cyril Ramaphosa, saying all the cabinet members must go and only the person who must remain is Cyril Ramaphosa. Today, they are all over Cyril Ramaphosa, trying to finish him off over the Pala. So what you are then seeing is that it might look like governance is starting to emerge, good governance is starting to emerge in Parliament. But it could also be that people like the DA don't want to sing with Cyril Ramaphosa when he sings. So they've realized that perhaps he's got no way of escape out of this. Therefore, they cannot be attached to him. They are dumping him now. Otherwise, if circumstances permitted, they would have continued with it. So I agree with the view that says our parliamentarians have agreed to a lot of wrong things and practiced wrong things for a very long time. For an instance, I do not understand why the ruling party, by the rules of parliament or even by law, should be allowed to be the majority in an oversight committee to oversee its own executive. And all those types of things. So there are many errors that they've allowed over time to continue and that they are continuing to practice. So it's far too early to say that these are not signs of opportunism, but signs of emerging good governance in our parliament and oversight structures.
Well, some in the governing party have argued that, to insist, that there should not be a majority in committees would in itself be a subversion of democracy. Well, that's what democracy gave you. So they are bound to be a majority everywhere they are in parliament, given the numbers they have.
I'll give you a very simplistic answer. I think if I was thinking like that, every university where I want to study, I would ask them that I must have something to say about the marks I get given. Because if you are doing the work and doing it sincerely, get somebody independent of yourself to mark your work. And that is what the oversight committees are about. There's no reason, there's no democracy that says that you must be the majority when your work is being reviewed. Secondly, there is the other aspect which they virtually abolished, really, in all spheres of government. This one of effective public participation, especially in the annual reports and all those nitty-gritties where the action actually happens. They exclude us as citizens. And that is part of democracy. If they were serious about democracy itself, we would be getting those things. I wrote to that security agency when they got a disclaimer and asked them to send me a copy and the actual report of the Auditor General about what was the Auditor General saying about. I've never received it until today. They don't regard the public as any entity to answer to. And our elected representatives are no better. That's why there are so many fights in that parliament, because nobody listens to anybody there.
In fact, it's one of those weird situations when it comes to the committee that's supposed to play an oversight over intelligence, for example. Its meetings are in secret. Nothing ever. In fact, I don't remember in the years. I think it happened only once in the years that I covered Parliament that we were allowed, which is the case with every other committee, to be part of those meetings, which I think in itself is a problem. There has to be, a way of ensuring that those people are accountable, and those meetings don't have to happen. All have to happen in secret.
Yeah, that's a difficult one, Vuyo, because really when you talk intelligence in a democracy, the snag is always this issue of secrecy, you see, which you never know how it should be managed and the extent to which it should be allowed. Hence, you find that even in Parliament, if we were to talk public participation, you see, when it comes to intelligence issues, yes, there are always limitations. And these limitations are actually deliberate. That's why it's important, really, I hope, that the report from the Zondo Commission doesn't help us to only punish, but helps us to think more deeply and reconstruct that which needs to be reconstructed.
Mr. Lwana, I'm wondering, you said earlier, someone like, Nos viewer Mapisa Ngakula, I can't remember the words that you actually used, but compromised in a sense. And one wonders here what's going to happen, because part of this report deals with the testimony or evidence of President Cyril Ramaphosa as the ANC president, but also, of course, as president of the country. Now, considering the fact that, there's been these musical chairs, which meant that even people who were compromised would still feature or be given positions of responsibility, which happens. I mean, if you look at a number of, chairpersons of committees in Parliament, people who were part of the very, administration that actually gave us, state capture, or under whom, state capture actually happened. And if you consider the things that Cyril Ramaphosa, questions he wasn't able to answer, obvious lapses. I mean, you saw how the interests of the party often came before, the interests of the country. And basically, what are the chances of that, stopping or continuing, given the fact that politics is a numbers game? It's going to an elective conference of the ANC in December. Already, you are seeing certain people who once belonged to the other group or faction moving towards him, because that's where power lies. So deals are going to be brokered there, and no one's going to talk about them. But effectively, you're going to have those deals, and you're going to have to, keep those people inside, because you don't want them outside doing something inside.
Yes.
Mr. Rano?
Yes, I agree with you. This is a very difficult thing. I mean, your own Mzwandi Lembete asked this question at the end of this presentation by Zondo to the president. What are you going to do if you're implicated, or if members of your cabinet are implicated? Today, this evening, Cyril Ramaphosa failed to answer that actual question as to what he will do if he finds his name himself is implicated. He started to use the plural in answering the question, that I will present this thing and we will decide in Parliament, we will decide what to do with in 4 months' time, when what to do about what might have emerged and what my intention of what to do. It was a long-winded story, not to say if I'm implicated, I think my morals will compel me to resign. If some of my cabinet members are implicated in that report, morally I'm obliged to remove them from the cabinet. He did not say that. As you correctly point out, from 2017, when he won the election, his next step was to consolidate his power within the African National Congress, even taking compromised people into his camp to weaken his opponents. If you listen to Arthur Fraser in some of your clips, he says he was labeled a Mbegite at some point. And I was reading an article, I think it was the Daily Maverick, that apparently they were friends with Cyril Ramaphosa at some point, this Arthur Fraser. So the idea that they've been enemies for a long time is very new. It's a very new idea. So you are talking about, as Machikri once pointed out, that in the ANC you are dealing with angels with horns and devils with halos. So it's crooks chasing after crooks. That is what is happening in the ANC. So you need to take everything there with a pinch of salt.
For example, with regards to the State Security Agency, here's a bit of what the report says. And incidentally, it speaks to one of the people I was referring to. It says, even prior to the creation of the Ministry of State Security and the consequent appointment of a Minister of State Security, through the 11 September 2009 proclamation, the SSA was required to report to a minister. This paved way for the minister's involvement in operations of the SSA. And that was exactly what happened. The evidence is overwhelming that Minister Cwele, former Minister of Intelligence, and Minister Mahlobo in particular did just that. In other words, here you have now, the commission says, Minister Mahlobo, when he was Minister of Intelligence, actually got involved in operations of the SSA, which he wasn't supposed to do. Now, he's a deputy minister in the current administration. Yes. One of those people, reportedly over the past week, who are now moving closer to President Cyril Ramaphosa. Makes it difficult.
It's actually quite complicated. It's complex in the sense that what it means basically that our democracy is in crisis, you see. And perhaps to save the country's democracy, an elite consensus would have to be created. It would have to emerge. Because if you look at the very foundation of South Africa's democracy, elite consensus, you see, was the foundation. How this consensus is going to be rebuilt, how it is going to be rekindled, is something I cannot tell you at this stage. But something has got to happen.
In fact, Mr. Luana, earlier, I mean, you spoke about some of the things you said, that on the back of the Mufamadi inquiry, President Cyril Ramaphosa has started, fixing those things. And there's a paragraph here that says, Minister Mahlobo, on the evidence, not only involved himself in operations, but also directed them. He was actively involved in, for example, projects under Project Maibuye, which included Operation Justice, about alleged attempts to bribe some judges. And Operation Commitment, which involved amounts of cash that were withdrawn from the SSA and given to Minister Mahlobo to give to President Zuma. And Operation Lock, which involved Mr. Eugene de Kock and was admitted by Mr. Mahlobo. A further stark example is that of Project Wave, which involved the media. Now, serious allegations leveled against a minister of intelligence about manipulating the nation's psyche, but also, giving people money, all this underhandedness, which is now coming through. Is there anything, well, except perhaps for the appointment of the Director General or the Head of Intelligence and making minister a minister in the presidency in charge of intelligence, is there anything else that you have seen that you think that he has done to actually deal with the problems that this report is going to be or is dealing with? Is there evidence of that? In other words, apart from those appointments and moving intelligence to his office directly?
Yeah, we are in a very difficult position because when Cyril Ramaphosa was the deputy to Zuma, he was also the chairman of the deployment committee. So all the crooks and other dubious characters, including the so-called Mahlobo and others, would have been deployed by the deployment committee. And I think it was Jafta who testified that one of the problems that actually happened was the change in philosophy from national security to state security. When Cyril concentrated power as state security in his office, Cyril Ramaphosa, to me, he was more concerned about his own security versus the insurrection and other things that were happening to him rather than protecting us. And actually running state security and national security as a risk management device to protect all of us increasingly. So I cannot say right now that there's evidence. For as long as national security is concentrated in the presidency, I think is going the way that many African leaders across the continent have gone, where state security is under the personal control of the state president and all of us become in danger in the process. I believe that state security should be a profession like any other profession, and people who are experts in state security and national security should oversee that thing. People who are not owing any alliances to any ruling party or any other political party who just treat that thing as a profession. So I think we're very far from having an independent state security that has got credible evidence that they are actually protecting us. Right now, as South Africans, we are extremely vulnerable to even the most amateurish threats in South Africa.
Share that view, Prof. About how, yeah.
I actually think the decision by the president to move state security into his office in the presidency is it was actually a very dangerous decision. Yeah. It's actually very dangerous, you see, because if it had a standalone ministry, it was reporting to, you see, and the presidency influencing the direction of strategy of that particular ministry, it would have been okay. But to bring it within the presidency, I still feel it's very dangerous, especially for President Cyril Ramaphosa, who doesn't have the kind of depth and understanding of security issues. President Zuma actually understood security, but President Ramaphosa, I don't think his understanding of security is as deep and as sharp as Mr. Zuma's understanding of security was. But at the same time, the point I also want to draw your attention to is that when we read this report, we also need to be careful of one thing, you see. Many of reports of commissions of inquiry share one common problem, the distinction between facts and interpretation, you see. That distinction is going to be very important as we read this particular report, you see. And also, the facts that are cited in this report, we must not forget that many of them still need to be sufficiently tested, you see. So I'm trying to say we must read this report, but read it very carefully, you see, and not be gullible and just swallow whatever it says. Yeah.
But wouldn't oversight, proper oversight, Mr. Luana, kind of take care of that? In other words, even if, let's say, someone agrees with you, you know, about what he has done instead, and the net effect of it, well, both the intention and the effect of it. Would oversight not take care of whatever concerns one may have with what he has done, and to whose benefit it might eventually be?
Yeah, I think I'm tempted to agree with you, Vuyo, there, that you see, if, for instance, you had to go through the reports of the Auditor General about the State Security Agency, just those reports alone would tell you that this thing has already failed. I'm talking if you go back several years. So the work of the portfolio committee, including the work that they did not do, somewhere in the minutes you'd already see that these people were flogging a dead horse anyway. The crimes that were reported in the popular media that were happening, the robberies, the thefts, the burglaries that were happening at the State Security Agency. And I agree with Arthur Fraser that they were not the only ones who were in a free-for-all type of scenario. Reports of the SIU, reports of the Auditor General, reports of National Treasury point in the same direction. So the oversight reports will tell you a lot. And I would put a lot of value on those as well. And I also agree with the view that a lot of this thing, from a criminal and good governance, by the way, is not about proving things to the extent of a crime that is a criminal case. When morals have failed, we need to act then before things become criminal in any event.
Prof, we don't know what the report says about the ANC, but it's difficult to see it's coming out smelling roses, you know.
Absolutely.
Given what was said, I mean, the acknowledgements that were made, the, you know, evidence of their president and so on. But in a year like this one, with everything the ANC says, it is busy with renewal and all of that. To see them correcting their wrongs, given the big fights.
It's very difficult to correct the wrongs, especially when everyone now is getting ready to fight for power and positions within the party. It's very difficult, in so much that I'm interested to see how their policy conference is going to unfold. Are they going to be able to talk sense when they debate policy, these guys? Or are they going to ask consultants to do papers for them and just rehash what is said in these papers? The ANC is at a serious crossroads. You see. Of course, it has not completely lost popularity, but it's on the path of seriously losing the popularity it has enjoyed in South African history. it's the coming conference, really, unless things just dramatically change, I think the coming conference is going to be a serious, disorderly battleground.
Pastor Kondlo, Mr. Lwana, let me thank both of you for coming through this evening. Of course, we were thoroughly disorganized by those delays. We had hoped that we would listen at least parts of the report and would be able to have focused discussions on the findings as well as the recommendations. Unfortunately, we didn't have time to do that because the report was delayed by several hours. So by the time we came on air, we hadn't seen the actual report. Apologies for that, but hopefully we'll be able to make up for this tomorrow once we would have had sight of the report. We even had to cancel some of the guests we had from some of the organizations that the report speaks to. Hopefully we will have them back tomorrow. That's our show for tonight. Do join us again tomorrow night. Have a good night.